Honorable Dr.Harini Amarasooriya, you have 14 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me this time to speak on two very critically important ministries that we are debating today. The ministry, the Media Ministry, as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Let me first speak a few words about certain proposed initiatives from the government with regard to media regulation that is being discussed. As you know, last year also we spoke about the fact that there is an attempt to bring in some form of media regulation, but the minister assured us at that point that this would not take place without appropriate consultation. However, we note again that according to media reports, there is a proposed Obscene Publication Act which has been approved by Parliament, and once again this too has not really discussed sufficiently with stakeholders, because we know that in a context where there is a heightened sense of nationalism and majoritarianism, even laws that may be drafted with good intentions can be interpreted and applied in ways that affect those who are exercising their right to free expression. So especially this is of special concern, particularly for artists and those who have critical perspectives, who even now have been unjustly targeted very often under the guise of obscenity. So this is something that I think we need to be very cautious about, precisely because of the way in which laws of this nature are often used to target those who are critical of the government in power. Cabinet approval has also been granted to appoint a committee for the amendment of existing laws applicable to journalists and media institutions, and for the preparation of policies and ethics. This is a good thing, because we know that there is a huge need to professionalize the media industry, so that there is proper sort of career path and career opportunities for those who engage in this sector. However, once again, questions are raised as to the consultative nature of these initiatives, and the important factor here is that the consultations actually should be taking place at the time of drafting these various amendments, rather than simply after drafting various regulations and then submitting them for some kind of cosmetic kind of consultative process. As you know, this is what is happening also with regard to the new constitution that is being proposed. A committee is appointed. The views of the public are still not really being taken into account, and will only be taken into account once we see a draft. But it's, I think, far more sort of, in a sense, the consultative process should be integrated to the entire formulation strategy. And I think similarly, there are fears that with regard to these policies that are being proposed for the media, that the consultative process is inadequate. There's also questions as to who actually will be part of this entire process, that the committee that is tasked with the kinds of reforms that have been proposed. So, as you know, we have not really held a very good, we've not been able to have a great reputation when it comes to the democratic freedoms with regard to journalism. And even recently, we've been again, Reporters Without Borders have noticed that press freedom in this country is on the decline, with, especially with the targeting of reporters who are considered to be critical of the government in power. So I think we need to be very aware of the kind of international attention also that is being mobilized with regard to these kinds of actions by the government, because it has a negative impact on the reputation of the country and our international standing, which brings me actually to the second issue that I want to talk about, which is in relation to our international relations and our foreign relations. I think it's imperative to acknowledge the fact that unless the international community has some kind of confidence in the Sri Lankan government, at a time when we are facing so many economic challenges, so many challenges on so many different fronts, it's going to be extremely difficult for us to obtain the kind of support necessary for us to overcome these many challenges. We cannot assume that the international community, and I'm sure that the minister, who has lots of experience in this area, is well aware of the fact that the international community is monitoring us very carefully and isn't just going to take the government perspective into account when they make their judgments upon us. Domestic policies of the government are carefully observed, how they treat opposition and those who are critical of the opposition are carefully observed. And in this sense, the fact that we also need to recognize that those who engage with the international community cannot be sort of regarded as in some way traitors to the country, or those who are going against the countries merely for expressing their views, as often happens and is often sort of portrayed as those who are somehow unpatriotic in ways. And I think we really need to look at these categories where we sort of divide our communities as patriotic, as unpatriotic, simply on the basis of whether they are supporting the government in power or not. Also, we have to recognize the fact that this government's reputation, which is sort of a reputation of indecisiveness and sort of constant reversals or revisions of policy, is also not doing the country any favors. This sort of indecisive nature of the government which is being observed also has huge impacts on the kind of stability, in building confidence about the stability of the government. And I think these are issues that are having negative repercussions for us in the international arena. For example, it is with regret, I think, that we need to note the fact that our permanent representative to the UN in New York failed to secure a place recently at the International Law Commission. 34 individuals who are recognized for their expertise and qualifications in international law were elected to this commission, and our representative, who also contested, was not elected. Now, this is something that we need to take seriously, because our permanent representative in the UN in New York is a former Attorney General and also served as a Chief Justice. If this is the international view or perspective on a former Attorney General and Chief Justice of our country, that he does not have the adequate qualifications to be in an international law commission, that's something that we need to consider very seriously. Our Minister for Foreign Affairs is a renowned legal scholar, and yet our representative in the UN fails to get elected to this rather important commission. Also, recently I saw this particular individual, gained a really bad record, especially for the way in which he talked about disappearance cases, particularly the case relating to Prageet Eknaliyagoda, where he openly mentioned in an international forum that Prageet Eknalia Goda was alive and living in a foreign country. When he was asked for the whereabouts of Prageet Eknalia Goda, to name the country in which Prageet Eknalia Goda was to be found, his answer was, God only knows. This kind of action really does not help in any way in building our reputation or in any way painting a good picture of our judicial system, of the independence of our judiciary, or our respect for human rights. This we need to acknowledge also with regard to two other recent incidents which can only be described as
Honourable
snubs,
Member, you have 2 more minutes.
snubs to the Sri Lankan government, where UK has reported in their 2020 annual report on human rights and democracy, which was published recently, that democracy is on the decline in Sri Lanka. The US recently did not invite us for an important conference on democracy, which is again questionable as to why they decided to leave us out. So there are indications that internationally our reputation is being damaged, and I think this affects not just this government but the entire country as a whole, and this is something we need to address. Finally, I just want to end on a much more practical note, that there are several people have been reporting inordinate delays when trying to access the ministry with regard to obtaining documents that are necessary for their foreign travels. And they are being inconvenienced greatly because there's no proper system to do this. And there's a huge kind of, I think, a lot of sort of red tape and no real information as to how people can obtain these kinds of documents that are necessary when they are traveling abroad. So I request the Minister to please look into this, because this is something that requires a very simple intervention to ensure that people are treated with dignity when they go into the ministry, and that they are given the correct information, and that they are able to get whatever documents they need as painlessly as possible. I think the current sense is that the ministry is not really dealing with this very efficiently. So once again, I urge this government to consider the consequences of their actions locally on our international reputation, on the notion of stability that we need to maintain at a time when we are facing so many challenges in so many different fronts. Thank you very much for this time.
Thank you.